Sahana vavatu, sahanao bhunaktu, sahaviryankaravavahai, tejasvinavadhitamastu, ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. How is Atma Bodha different from modern spirituality? Would someone like to answer that? Revise one more time. See, every action provides benefit, like benefit, certain kind of benefit. Another action provides another kind of benefit, and another action provides another kind of benefit. So this action will never provide the benefit that action B provides. And action C will never provide the benefit that action A and B provides. So this means now which action are you going to choose that's going to encompass all benefits, right, of every other action? So just an action itself will always limit itself to the benefit that it provides. So in that sense, every action becomes limited, but also because it is time-bound. It starts, action starts, and action ends. Therefore, benefit starts and benefit ends. And so this ending is in time. But you are out of time. You are the truth of time. Therefore, we do not want to be kept within time. We want to understand I am the very truth of time itself. And therefore, upon the further analysis of action, which will be performed, we will see why action has a limitation, to make this explicitly clear, because there's one more nuance to understand here. Verse 2. Bodhaha anya sadhanebhyaha hi sakshat mokshai kasadhanam pakasya vahnivat jnanam vina mokshaha na siddhyati. So this verse is encompassing the essence of stating first that smallness is not just a psychological smallness. We are talking a empirical smallness that an individual has. So this means we're speaking about a much larger smallness than smallness that's given to us by society. You know, you're not good enough, you're not a good artist, you're not a good painter, you'll never amount to anything. The fact is, we're talking about a much greater smallness, much larger, much longer smallness. The smallness that belongs to the CEO, to the president, to the wonderful, clever scientist who has provided us many inventions, Nikola Tesla, Thomas Edison. Okay, we're speaking about the fact that I open my eyes and I see a small body here. And I see a large world over there. And through that, I come to certain conclusions. I see that I only know so much. I don't know everything. I only have so many skills. I only have so much talent. I only have so much memory. I only have so much whatever it is. And so on top of the empirical smallness, we now develop further psychological complexes. You see this? That's 2 times small now. Empirically small and subjectively small. I open my eyes, I see my empirical smallness. Oh, I'm just here. My parents are big. The world is big. Oh, that's a fact. You are small when you're born. But the fact now that I start to compare myself, this develops extra loads onto the mind. Therefore, smallness becomes a fact. Now, what it says is that according to Vedanta, you are not small. You're the whole thing. So the question is then, why is it that I feel small if I am not small already? If right now I am the whole thing, why is it that I feel like, a small individual, I carry myself like a small individual? Why is that?
Because the appearance of the body and identification.
Good. So Vedanta wants to use the word here, it says the word, it will use the word avidya soon, but it says because you don't know the reality. That means we open our eyes and we don't know what is it that we're looking at. Naturally, the world's going to be different. I'm going to be different from the world. We're all going to be different. Therefore, did you make a choice being ignorant? Was it your choice? If it was your choice, who would have made the choice to be ignorant? Nobody. And then suffer consequentially. Therefore, that's an empirical fact. So we're dealing with a much larger problem than kind of, I go to the psychologist, which they can do a wonderful job, but can they remove your empirical smallness? No. They can only put band-aids on for a while and make you feel a little bit better about your situation at home, with spouse, and so on. Okay. Now, it then says that since knowledge alone can give you freedom, because you're already free, therefore I have to discover how is that true. And action cannot, since every action will provide a limited benefit with a limited time of period. So now the question is, what is meant specifically by knowledge and action? So we will analyze that now. When it comes to action, we call this Purusha Tantra in Sanskrit. So we're talking about knowledge right now. Purusha Tantra. Okay? So this means action is always dependent upon you, the Purusha, the person. That means it's dependent upon the person. So what do I mean by this? Okay. So in Sanskrit, we have 3 words. You can either do something, kartum shakyam, not do something, akartum shakyam, or do something different, anyatha kartum shakyam. So this means I can either meditate, I can choose not to meditate. Who's this I? The person, right? When it comes to an action. Choose not to meditate, or I can go for a ride, do something totally different, no meditate at all. Is there any other option that the Purusha, the person, with a free will can do other than that? I can do, I can not do, or I can do something different. 3 options when it comes to person. So your free will is limited to this much. I can do, not do. Now do what? Action. Not do, action. Do some other, action different. What do we say about action? It's always going to give me a limited result. So this means that no matter how much I exercise my free will, what am I going to get? An action, which is always going to have a limited result. So I can now engage in selfless service, I can provide charity, I can go and meditate, I can move energy up and down my spine. They're all actions and they will always give me a limited result. Whereas when it comes to knowledge, knowledge is what we call Vastu Tantram. Vastu Tantra. So, knowledge is dependent upon the nature of itself. What do I mean by this? Suppose you want to, what is this? This is a metal, I hope it's metal, right? A metal cup. Now, suppose you've got some kind of personal issues around metal. Is metal gonna, and you say, no, I want this to be a glass cup. Is it going to change the nature of what this is? Suppose you're being conditioned and you're told all your life that metal equals glass. So now when you look at the metal, you say, no, this is glass. I don't like metal. I've got personal issues against metal. I want to destroy metal. I want metal to be what I want it to be. Is all of that argument in the head going to change the nature of what this is? No. So this means when it comes to knowledge, understanding something, then it becomes Vastu Tantram. In other words, I have no choice but to recognize this for what it actually is. You see the difference? Here I have a choice when it comes to action. When it comes to knowledge, seeing things as it is, seeing the metal as it is. No choice at all. In fact, as far as choice is concerned, the only thing you can do is align your understanding to what is. Clear so far?
Its knowledge is not dependent. Like that, can you take like that?
It's not what?
Knowledge is not dependent. Means here it is dependent on Purusha.
Here is action is dependent upon the person, on person's stuff, person's choices. The nature of an object is not dependent upon the person. The person can say whatever they want. Thing remains a thing. Yeah.
Alternative fact.
Hmm?
Alternative fact.
Yeah.
That one.
Alternative facts don't work. So now, what's going to happen? Suppose I walk around and I carry unconsciously the notion this is a glass. How is that going to manifest in the world? I say this is a glass. Would you like a glass cup? Would you like a glass? What are you going to smile at me a little bit, cuckoo, number one. Number two, people are going to not relate with you. Number three, you're going to feel something inside, that indicator, that emotional indicator. Ishwa was going to say, no, you haven't found what you're searching for, aka seeking continues. Because the mumukshu, who hasn't yet discovered, they're looking at reality how? What they want it to be. In other words, I want reality to be some magical experience. I want it to be, fairies and rainbows and like parked in some amazing experience. So when it comes to Atma, Atma is what? Atma is Purusha Tantra or Vastu Tantra? Vastu Tantra. Except it's not an object. So when it comes to knowing who I am, there is no question of having a choice of what I want me to be. I can't say I want me to be some, great experience who's floating in the air, this and that. I have no choice but to understand the nature of myself. Therefore, the nature of myself becomes a matter of knowledge. Suppose you want to understand what this is. Okay. What do you need for this? Eyes. Eyes we call pramana. Pramana means means of knowledge, by which knowledge takes place. How are you going to ascertain the fact that Earth is round? Through inference. So that's another pramana. So with inference, what I have to do is I have to infer. Even though my eyes see a flat Earth, the Earth is actually round. So how am I going to use a pramana to understand that? Well, there are several methods. You can say, number one, if you move to the North Pole, North Hemisphere, and you look at the stars, there will be very different alignments than if you move to the South Equator, because there's a curvature of Earth. Therefore, if the Earth was flat, then if I go to the north, the stars will be exactly the same as if I go to the south. But because of this, I look different directions. That is pramana, called inference. So I still use my perception. I still need to see the stars. And then based on the alignment of the stars, I make inferences. Different. And then use some mathematical formulas and you ascertain there's a curvature. Another way is through day and night. Whatever, right? Whatever methods you want to use. So when it comes to an object, a worldly object, it is still Vastu Tantram. It doesn't matter. Otherwise, you end up going to those communities called flat earthers. Very small community. And then the rest of us looks at them and go, long way to go. We don't know. They could change overnight. Either way, it doesn't matter. When knowledge is the center, I have no choice but to understand it as it is. It doesn't care about my prejudices, about my likes and dislikes, about my history, about my culture, about what I want it to be. It doesn't care because it is independent of itself. It has its own nature, and as long as I remain different, I see it differently, inner pain comes. inner angst. I'm still seeking. One more teacher, one more teaching, one more pramana. This. Now, what about Atma, self, which is not a form? How do I understand pramana? Do I see Atma? Do I infer Atma? How can I do that? Because inference and perception is always about a physical object. So when it comes to Atma, still Vastu Tantra applies, but we use a Shabda Pramana. So we add one more word, Shabda Pramana. I'm sure you maybe heard. Shabda Pramana. This means a means of knowledge through a systematic use of words. Now, what does this mean? Well, we've got different kinds of Shabda Pramanas. We've got, for example, this is just a history now of Vedanta. We've got Shruti. So this is, for example, heard. That means that which is revealed. Upanishads. We've got Smrti. This is Bhagavad Gita. So Smrti means, usually we think of it as remembered, but actually it's recreating like a story in the light of Shruti. So it's just creating a story in the light of the truth. And we've got what's called Prakarana Grantha. Prakarana Grantha means a topical text. Now, what kind of a text is Atma Bodha, the one that we're studying? Prakarana Grantha. So what does this mean? Why does Prakarana Grantha exist? Because there were teachers some time ago who, like Adi Shankara, said, hey, I want to put together all of the knowledge or the most important parts of the Shruti and Smrti, mostly Shruti, and I want to rearrange it and make it very accessible for people. I want to give it a nice structure, a nice order, to make it super simple to capture. Therefore, Prakarana Grantha is born. So Prakarana Grantha reveals the knowledge of Atma, and Atma is Vastu Tantra. And what are we going to do here? What's the teacher's job? To make you see the nature of Atma as it actually is, without the mind sidetracking left or right. Okay, so this is what is going to be done. Suppose you want Atma to be common, an experience. And you say, I want Atma to be, for example, okay, an experience. Now, who can give me a little bit of logic? What's the potential danger if you say, I want to experience, enlightenment is some magical experience. I want Atma, the reality, to be an experience. For example, firstly, you have to ask for whom, right? For whom? For me. Okay, not for you, for me. So what kind of a logical problem can you see in this statement? I want the final reality, the truth of all things, to be an experience felt in my body. That's a logical fallacy.
The experience will pass.
Yeah, and where is that experience taking place? Yeah, in a changing body, changing mind, and a changing body and mind never stays the same.
Decaying body.
It's going through decay. What else? Well, if you say, I want Atma to be an experience, then where is that experience happening? Here, not over there. And yet Atma, or the self, is the truth of everything. So what am I now doing? I'm taking the truth of everything and I'm localizing it over here. Is that Vastu Tantra or Purusha Tantra? Purusha. Why?
Because it is dependent on Purusha.
Yeah, in other words, I'm wanting it to be an experience over here. There's a person involved, there's a free will involved that's saying, I want an experience to be here. I don't want you to have the experience. I want to have the experience. Already it reveals it's Purusha Tantra. The second reason why Atma cannot be an experience is experience has no standardization. For example, if you go to the North Pole or the north of equator, and you look at the sun, and then you go to the south of equator, and you look at the sun, would the sun be different? Would the sun, the way that it moves? Of course it will. I mean, you go to Ireland, right? It's hardly nighttime over there. And then you go to an equator, and your experience of the sun is like a perfect east to west, right? Perfect east to west. You go to the Ireland, no, it's more like over there, it's like somewhere over there. There's no perfect like this. It's different. So now whose experience, they're both having the experience of the sun. Whose experience is right?
In their respective cases, they are right.
You see? Yeah?
Both are right in their respective cases.
Yeah, both are right, but from their standpoint. So from my standpoint, it is right. And your experience, that's not true for me. So in that sense, experience cannot be a standardized, Atma cannot be an experience. Otherwise, we're going to be here forever. No, Atma is some big thing. Or how about Atma is a floating sensation? Just feeling a little bit lighter, like walking, on the ground. Or I want Atma to be the witness observing thoughts. I want Atma to be the witness who is observing thoughts. I want to be the witness. And that witness, or call it whatever you want, the observer is witnessing my thoughts. Familiar with this? That's not Atma. That's called psychological methods of giving yourself a little break by separating your ego from your thoughts. The ego now becomes the observer, the ahamkara, and there is my thoughts, my problematic thoughts, and I create this distance, and I go, look, I am the observer. I am the self. I figured out the reality. This comes from lovely books like Power of Now, which are lovely. I like to practice that. It's nice to walk in a forest and just observe things. It comes from modern psychology, such as ACT, acceptance commitment therapy, or DBT, dialectical commitment therapy, behavioral therapy. These are all modern psychological methods to help borderline suicide cases sometimes. To say, hey, I know you're suffering, now let me show you how to create a distance between your painful thoughts and you. And then this becomes ingrained in spirituality. Becomes a spiritual bestseller, where I am now the observer, and I figured out the reality. And 99.9% of seekers stay there at the observer level. Atma is the presence in whom the floating sensation comes to be. Atma is the presence in whom the observer observing thoughts comes to be. Atma is the presence in whom there is a witness that's busy observing thoughts comes to be. And thus, Atma Bodha will show us how is this so. It will do an analysis, a much deeper analysis into this. Okay. Now, the next question is everyone clear so far?
Why Atma is called Drik?
Drikdrashya. Good. We will come to Drikdrashya Viveka. It is a preliminary understanding. Why? Specifically because it's the easiest to relate to like that. Subject, object. That's the essence of it. And everyone will very quickly understand subject, object. But you have to eventually drop that too. It's not the final. Oneness doesn't mean I am the observer here and I am observing that over there. The whole thing is me. I might as well say the wall is observing Andre. But we don't speak like this. Because we create so much identity over here. This one, me awareness here, and I'm observing you over there. This is all ahamkara speaking.
So that way we can say Atma is the witness of the witness.
I wouldn't say. Atma is the presence in whom the witness is enabled. The presence in whom the mind is enabled and does what it does. The presence in whom the ahamkara does what it does. The presence in whom the ahamkara objectifies the world.
Because of which everything happens.
Atma is the presence in whom, because of which the mind does what it does. Enables, objectifies things. So don't say, now, oh, I am objectifying you. That's ahamkara objectifying.
So Atma and Prana will be same. Atma and Prana.
Prana. Prana? Oh yeah, what about it?
They are both same.
No, that's, no, I think that's a different way. Prana is one of the 5 layers we will talk about. It's just energy, how you drink a lot of coffee, your prana is high.
On the Purusha, why is the choice of the individual to be here in the seminar listening to you? Why is that not an action?
Good, okay, so as far as action is involved, you need to put your body here. But look at this. When you go, okay, so suppose we want to go to a fish market right now. So as far as my free will, my Purusha Tantra is involved, I took this body to the fish market. But what happens when the fish smell takes place? Do you have a choice over that? No. So all I have to do is show up and the knowledge of fish smell takes place. All I have to do is show up and through Shabda Pramana, exposing my ears, my mind to this knowledge, it does what it's meant to do. It removes my notions, turning myself into something that's away. Okay? So in that sense, there is a choice, but for knowledge, there's no choice. Just listen. Can you choose? Suppose we now go to the fish market and you say, I don't want to smell the fish. Is that going to make any difference? No. See, that's a limitation of the example. You close your nose, right? But that's not the point. Okay? The fish smell will take place, whether you like it or not. Knowledge takes place whether you like it or not. Just expose the mind on and on and on and on until things become clear. That's why it's Vastu Tantra. There's no choice involved for Atma to be revealed.
So this would mean for the Atma to be revealed, we have to listen again and again and contemplate on the teachings again and again.
Yeah, that's why we have this Shravanam, Mananam, right? Constant doubt removal.
No need for meditation, no need for japas,
It has its place. It's all there to introduce devotion and mind, purity, and keep the mind focused on Ishvara. So everything has its place. Yeah.
But there is a word, no, so Sakshi Chaitanya.
Yeah, Sakshi Chaitanya, depends on the context. So in Drigdarsha Viveka, we will use specifically the word Sakshi to equate to Atma, awareness. But here, I will use the word Sakshi and I will say it's just the observer, right? The ahamkara. So the context will always change. Yeah. So suppose you know that this knowledge is supposed to take place, but you turn it into an experience. For example, what kind of things, how can this knowledge manifest wrongly? I want to show you if you don't understand certain principles, whether Atma is direct knowledge or indirect knowledge. So this is a new concept I want to show. We have 2 kinds of knowledges. One of them is called Paroksha Jnanam, and the other is Aparoksha Jnanam. Okay. Paroksha Jnanam, and the other one is just add the word Now, Paroksha Jnanam means indirect knowledge. So for example, who's had a durian? You know, the fruit that you can kill someone with. Right? So now, suppose I describe to you a durian, you know, common in Malaysia, right? And I say to you, you know, it's creamy like an avocado. And, you know, its shell it's a weapon. It's like big needles, a bunch of like pyramids all around it, but they're very sharp. So it's very hard to hold because it's heavy and wants to go inside your skin. But it smells and it's creamy. So now, what kind of knowledge do you have about a durian? Considering suppose you've never seen a durian before. Is it indirect knowledge or is it direct knowledge? It's indirect knowledge. So indirect knowledge means I've heard about it, it's kind of got an idea, mental construct, but I haven't tasted it. The moment you taste it, it becomes aparoksha jnana, it becomes direct knowledge. Okay, now, what kind of knowledge will Atma Bodha give us? Will it give us indirect knowledge or direct knowledge of who you are? Hopefully direct knowledge, right? If I give you indirect knowledge, what does that mean? Oh yeah, Atma is something over there, you know, Buddhas has it, you know, Ramana has it. You know, we're just listeners here doing nothing. No. Atma is aparoksha jnanam. So this means that Atma, the final reality awareness, is right now here. There's not one person it's not a way for anyone. So the question is, if the final reality, Brahman, is right here, right now, and you are that, and it's direct knowledge for you, never mind other enlightened beings, for you, then why is it not true for me? Otherwise, I will not be, you know, looking.
Because I don't know it.
Because I don't know it. I don't know it. Why? Because I don't have the right mind. Because I've mixed up the final thing with this body. Because I've been told, you know, all my life that I am as good as this. A million different reasons. So what does the book want to show you? That Atma is not something like a durian. You don't have to produce it. It's a matter of removing the clouds that are preventing me from recognizing it right now, right here. I don't have to produce it. It's already with you now. This is crucial. If I don't have to produce it, that means there's no question of bringing it forward. There's no question of being blessed, Atma, by someone, or experience it in meditation. Because to experience it in meditation means it's not here right now. To have some kind of a meditation, savikalpa, whatever, nirvikalpa, that means from the standpoint of now, while I'm not having it, Atma is indirect. You see that? That's wrong. Atma is direct. So this means I have no choice but to discover how it's direct right now. And then the verse wants to bring this all together, and it says, brilliant visual metaphors. This is why Atma Bodha is so relatable. It says that, uses the example cooking and fire. Now when you want to cook a dish, right, what's the primary ingredient for cooking? Out of all of everything else, that's the most essential, fire. Everything else becomes secondary. The ingredients, the pot, the water, this or that, it's all secondary. Fire becomes primary. Therefore, what is secondary? Mind purification. What is primary? Discovering the nature of the self becomes primary. Therefore, mind purification is not the end, it's only a means. That's why we say tapas. Okay, verse 3. It says, knowledge removes ignorance. That's the headline. Avirodhitaya karma na avidyam vinivartayet. Vidya avidyam nihanti eva tejaha timir sanghavat. So several words are used. Ignorance, avidya, knowledge, vidya, and karma. So I want to cover these three words. They're the essence of the verse. So let's cover ignorance and knowledge. It says here, just as darkness has no other way to be removed than through the light, in that same way, ignorance has no other way to be resolved than through that which opposes ignorance, which is knowledge. What opposes darkness? How about maybe we turn off the lights, okay, and make a dark room, and we all start to chant together. And we want the darkness to be removed. Is that going to work? How about we start to build some constructions, some temples and houses, and charge some money for people to go in there? That's going to remove the darkness? No. Only one possible solution, which is the light. In that same way, he wants to compare now self-ignorance, avidya, that which makes me not know the truth, only has one opposing factor, which is self-knowledge. So we're all born and we don't know the nature of self. And now we're given that knowledge, therefore we remove and we provide the only means, self-knowledge. So what does self-knowledge do? It removes self-ignorance. That's the only way to solve the problem. Okay. Now it uses the word action, and then I'll tie them together. It uses the word karma. Now what is karma? Suppose, the word karma, in this case, would, suppose, if I turn on if the machine is running, right, the machine is running, the fan is running, is that karma? Because karma means action. No. Okay, right now this aircon is running, that is not karma. Karma in the Vedas specifically has to involve two principles. One, a person who has free will, a conscious being who has free will. Only then the word action becomes true. So if I turn on the aircon, only then, who's got karma now? Who's done the karma? I've done the karma. I cannot say that's karma because that's insentient. Okay? So karma is done by a sentient being who has free will. Now, let us connect this and ask a question. What's the relationship between ignorance and karma? Ignorance and knowledge and action. Ignorance and action. So what do we say? Ignorance is I don't know, and action is karma. Karma, which is always done by a person. Okay. The relationship is that before you are born, reality is one. Before knowledge takes place, reality is one. After knowledge takes place, reality is one. It's always one. Except before I knew, even though reality was one, I thought it was two. There was me here, and there was you over there. There was me here, a small person, and there is the world out there, two. Now what happened? Why did I think it was two, even though reality was one, as it is right now? When I was born, why do I see it as two? According to the verse, was it this verse? Yeah, because of avidya. Avidya. Now, what do we say that opposes avidya? Vidya, knowledge. Okay, vidya. So now, because of ignorance, what happened? It made me see myself as one of the many. as a karta, as a doer, right? The one who has to do and go and buy things and pay the taxes and, have children and family and all this and work. So ignorance gives rise to a doer, okay, a doer. And a doer always necessitates action. Wherever there's a doer, there's action, okay? Can you be a doer without acting? No. To say that I'm a doer is to simultaneously say that I am the one who does action. So doer necessitates action. Now, when I do action, who does an action? A person who is away from the one. So what do I reinforce when I do an action? I reinforce avidya, ignorance. So I was born in this world where all that is here is one. No difference between you or me or anything here. Carrying ignorance, I saw myself as different from the one. That different from the one had to do things in the world. Applied action. Every time I did something, what was I trying to do? Help myself to appease myself, to please myself. Who? Which self? The one who is one of the many. Therefore, action motivates. Action reinforces ignorance, and ignorance motivates action. Ignorance motivates action, and action reinforces ignorance. Okay, so why am I doing action right now? Because I want to please myself. Myself, one of the many, right? One of the many. So in other words, I'm reinforcing that I'm one of the many. That's what an action does. It reinforces that I'm indeed one of the many, which is ignorance. That's not true. I am the whole thing. And because I have ignorance, I'm motivated to act. Because I think I'm different from you. Therefore, I need to love you. I need to go and hug. I need to go and have this and have that and have this. Who needs to have this and that? Me, one of the many. So action reinforces that indeed I am a small individual. Reinforces my ignorance of the whole thing. The root of all desires is avidya. I mean, if you have a desire for moksha, it's motivated to get rid of that ignorance. Yeah. Could you say that the root of all desires is avidya? Yeah, I wouldn't kind of categorically put it like that. Let's just say that desires have a place.
I'm connecting action to desires.
Right.
Desire there comes, yeah.
Right. Let's put it this way. Desire has a place. There is desires for being of service. There is desires of removing ignorance. There is desire for whatever, swimming or learning a hobby or a skill. Yeah, they're coming out of the fact that I think that I need to kind of please myself, become someone. Right? You could say that. Yeah.
There's a problem with this also because it's beginningless also. No?
Yeah.
So if you start, so where began the ignorance? Where begin it with an action or with ignorance? So it's hard to say. It's an eternal thing.
Yeah, it's because it's been going on eternally. There's one life that you come to and you want to solve the problem, right? You mature enough to say, I want to resolve this once and for all, right? But yes, it's beginningless, and this will come later.
Logically, can we say then Ishvara is avidya?
No, not at all. This will be evident why. Okay, because Ishvara means all knowledge, all power. Ishvara knows its truth as Brahman. You and I don't, at least until knowledge takes place. That's why knowledge comes from Ishvara. No, it comes from a rishi. Well, a rishi tuned into Ishvara's source, just like Newton tuned into the laws of gravity. did some thinking, and it's non-negatable. You find it's not negatable. That's how the rishis, they tuned into the knowledge comes from Ishvara. So if Ishvara was ignorance, then what about the Vedas? The Vedas are also ignorance, right? The Vedas are Ishvara's knowledge. Ishvara specifically means Sarvajna Sarvashakti. All knowledge, all power. Witnesses? No. Because see, Ishvara is not an entity who's witnessing. Ishvara is the whole thing. Okay, Ishvara is the laws and the forms. What witnesses is the ahamkara, as we said. That's what witnesses. Ahamkara is made out of Ishvara.
I have a question. Is Ishvara self-conscious?
Ishvara knows its truth. Put it that way. Ishvara means the whole thing.
Somehow it should be self-conscious.
Yeah, but see, what do you mean when you say self-conscious? Do you mean do you imply it's an entity who's now somewhere sitting alone, away?
Somehow I know it's not. But then the way you put it, I think, is there then?
I said Ishvara is all knowledge, all power. Everything is Ishvara. Everything is Ishvara. Even if this is Ishvara, is this conscious of itself? No. This is Ishvara. Is this conscious of itself? Yes. Ishvara is the whole thing. Some things are conscious, some things are not conscious.
I got an answer.
You got the answer? Okay.
That ignorance motivates action, and that gives a feeling that one who has knowledge doesn't perform any action.
The one who has knowledge performs an action, but what performs an action? Your body and your mind. It's made to perform an action. Krishna said in the Gita, you cannot not act. In fact, a wise person does action which is not opposed to dharma. You see this? A wise person does an action which is not opposed to dharma. That means a wise person still does actions in this world, except they are dharmic. Yeah. So you can't say now that the Atma is doing action. Atma is not doing action. Atma is actionless. It is the awareness.
So what is then the relationship between Ishvara and Atman? Ishvara has everything, so Atman is also part of Ishvara?
No, we're not at Ishvara yet. This is way ahead, way ahead. Yeah, we're going to talk about Ishvara. Yeah. So one more thing I want to say is that does this mean now if action reinforces ignorance, does that mean that action is useless? Does that mean action is now bad? Don't do action? Become actionless. No. The irony is we need action to be in the world, to recognize our distortions, which is preventing you and I from recognizing Atma is actionless. I need to be in the world. I need to fall down. I need to get feedback and go, whoa, I was way off. My understanding of Ishvara was way off. I was living in my little bubbles. For that, I need to be in the world. So the world helps me reduce my subjectivities to be clear enough that when knowledge comes, I am not imputing any of these personal ideas onto the knowledge. That's how action becomes simultaneously your savior. So it's not a one-off answer, action is bad. It's always a place for everything. That's what Vedanta is. We're putting things in the right place. Verse 4, it says, Atma shines after ignorance is removed. Parichinaha iva ajnanat tannashe sati kevalaha swayam prakashate hi atma megha paye amshuman iva. Yeah, so the self, it says it appears to be limited for a person. That means you appear to be limited. Why? Because you and I never inquired into this since beginningless time. Simple as that. You could have a certain habit about yourself, and you're carrying this habit, and you will never question it. But people see this, they're like, hey, you've got this little quirk. You got this blind spot. But to you, there's no blind spots. Why? Because I never inquired into it. It was never brought out. Nobody told me about it. Therefore, I carry this blind spot since my lifetime. How long have we been carrying ignorance of self? Lifetimes. So, the verse says that reality is one. And I cannot thus be different from that one. Think about this. Right now, all that is here is one. Can you be different from that one? No. And yet, I look at myself as different from the one. Does that not imply there's an error in my thinking? Yes. So what does this mean? I have to understand that that is wrong. The notion is incorrect. I have to discover my fullness. And therefore, it also says that this fullness that I am discovering, it is not being produced. It's only being revealed. Why was it not revealed? Because the mind cannot grasp it, number one. It's not an object. Like this, we can all grasp inside our minds. And the mind cannot produce it. So for this reason, mind needs a pramana to understand the nature of the self. And the pramana will point out to the mind something that is different from the mind. And this we will see in the next verse. Okay. Now it uses a metaphor and it says, just as the sun is always shining, but it's covered by the clouds. In that same way, Atma is always true, but what's covering it? My lack of knowing what Atma really is, my ignorance of Atma. So what's important here? To understand two principles. The first is that you do not produce Atma, so you can't say, I want to get it from someone. And second of all, it is hidden. It needs to be revealed. And the next verse will show that.